Hey guys, can you hear me? Hey everyone, let me change the screen. Hey, how are you guys doing? It's been some time, right? Yeah. I guess I owe you an explanation why it took me so long. Um, well, it was basically 80% work and 20% sick. I was basically full of work, and when I finished my work, I just immediately got very sick. So I couldn't stream even if I wanted. It was probably just my body getting rid of all of the bad energy, but I'm okay now. I really wanted to come back, especially because this stream was very important. Yeah, I'm super happy to see that there was people waiting. Actually, nice to see all you here. By the way, um, you might notice that my audio is worse than ever. uh, you can probably hear that horrible vibration behind my voice more than ever, and that's because it is my air conditioning going at max behind me because we're under a terrible heat wave. So you'll have to bear with it for a bit because it is literally keeping me alive. Hope it's not too bad. If it's too bad, I'll try to fix it a bit more. Okay. Nice. Let me read a bit of your comments. Low volume. Let me see what I can do about the volume because I it is mainly because of the noise. How about there? Okay, let me know if it works later. Okay, so this is basic animation. This is the basic animation stream. Um, Most of you guys from that come from Sakuga Foundry probably already know the basics of it, and you have probably watched um, the Sakuga Foundry version of this stream because we already did that, right? But for the people that come just from YouTube, um, you might know understand 100% of the stuff I'm talking. If that's the case, just ask me on the chat, okay? Because I might go a bit fast. Uh, if you don't know, it might look a bit fast if you don't know what I'm talking about. So I'll stop and explain you, okay? And yeah, hopefully this will be like half of me just talking, and half of you also asking questions because you can search for most of this stuff on YouTube and you'll just find it very easily. But the important thing about this stream is that you can ask anything, okay? So that you don't go uh, you don't leave this stream without your questions answered, okay? Better volume, but the robotizing noise is more prominent. Yeah, I know. Sorry. I'll find a way to fix it, and hopefully the heat wave will not be that terrible for the next streams. But I'm doing my best. Okay. Um, Someone's asking, will you ever do the more complex compositing tutorial on After Effects, like animation effects and 3D stuff? Honestly, probably not. Um, I know what you mean, like complex After Effects thing, but the thing is, I'm not a compositing artist. I know the very basics of After Effects, and honestly, most of the compositing I do it in TV Paint because it's just easier for me. Maybe I can eventually teach you some stuff like that, but I'm not an expert at all. on something like that. You'll have to get someone else. I might ask around on Tonari. Maybe someone would like to do something like that. But I'm personally not the best person for that. Finding this live stream just saved me from usual routine of YouTube Shorts, brain rot, doom scrolling. Oh my god. I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, like doom scrolling is terrible. I'm happy to hear this was useful. Can you explain the physics to me? Lacking knowledge, I'll try to do it here. Okay? And if I don't touch on the specific thing you want, you can just ask me. Especially if you could mention Studio Ghibli timing and spacing, and where I can find its timesheet. Studio Ghibli timesheets? I haven't seen Studio Ghibli timesheets. I think there's a lot of layout, but timesheets, because people just don't know how to read them. Studio Ghibli just doesn't publish them, I guess. But honestly, I don't think Studio Ghibli does anything very special with timesheets or timing or spacing. I just think they do good animation. So it shouldn't be too different from what I'm going to show you, okay? We'll see. Last question before we begin. Compositing, is it in-house, isn't it? Or you literally have to be in Japan for a big studios? It depends. If it is a small production, you can just get some freelancers to help you with compositing, which is what Tonari does most of the time. If it's kind of a bigger production, you can get a studio. We know a couple of studios, like professional anime studios that we call, and they do our compositing. Hey Hansel! Oh, nice to see you here. Hope you're having a good time. Going back to animation this year, man. I wish you luck. Let me know if you need any help, okay? Okay, let's begin. First of all, so that no one criticized me that I'm doing a basic animation stream without defining animation. Let's define animation. You guys probably know that this, but animation, the word, comes from Latin, and it kind of means giving life to something, right? And that's basically the definition most people give it, to kind of imitate life with a sequence of drawings, right? That you play on a certain timing. But honestly, in the real world, it's a bit more complex than that, just a bit. Because you not only animate stuff that are alive, right? You also animate machines and like other things from nature that are not necessarily alive. So the normal definition doesn't apply totally. So to me, animation is more like imitating reality in general, right? Because the thing you want is to convince the viewer that they are not watching just a flat screen, right? That there's actually a world behind, with stuff happening, with characters and a 3D space and a story and all of that. You want to suspend the disbelief, right? And that's the thing. When your animation fails at some point, like you do something wrong, and the viewer notices, the disbelief comes back, and they say like, "Oh, that looked kind of weird," like, and they remember they're watching an animation and not a real world or a story, right? So that's kind of the real world definition of animation, is try to imitate reality, okay? Without getting too philosophical about it. What might get a little bit more philosophical is when we begin talking about timing and spacing, because if you want to imitate reality, your most basic tools for reality are time and space, right? just the most basic. And animation has a tool for each, which is timing and spacing. Right? That way you will not forget what they are. But we have to define it a bit better because even more experienced animators tend to um, mix them together, and that can cause some trouble. So let's define timing and spacing for animation. I'm going to change to TV Paint now, and you guys let me know if I'm going too fast. Okay, I guess you guys can see TV Paint, right? Going back. Yeah. Okay, so timing basically is, and this is the like the definition you write on your notebook. Timing is the exact frame in which something is shown on screen. Okay, what do I mean by frame? Oh, the timesheet. Don't worry, I'm not going to give you a deep dive into the timesheet yet. I just want to let you know how it works, okay? So, animation is composed by several frames, right? That we play one after another to create the illusion of things happening, right? And each one of those images that we project is a frame that you can see here. Again, don't get scared by this. I'm going to explain you later how it works. First frame, second frame, third frame, fourth frame. And it goes down, down, down until more or less 144, which is the standard for a timesheet. But it can go infinitely. And if you look carefully, the timesheet is actually just a normal timeline on a software, just like this. Look down here. The timeline you have in any animation or movie software is the timesheet. It's exactly the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, da, 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 da. And it has layers. Layer A, B, C, and they pile on each other, right? And the background is right here. Again, you don't have to learn how this works right now. I'm just gonna use it for some examples. And later on the layout stream, I'm going to teach you how this really works. So don't get scared yet. Oh, by the way, this is kind of a trivia, but something that you still should know. Animation works on 24 frames per second, right? 24 FPS. Which is, of course, 1 second. Do you know why it is this number, this specific number? Because there's a reason, which is kind of an historical trivia. So, very early video cameras, like that use film, and I'm talking about like beginnings of the 1900s or even before, they used to work at 16 frames per second. So old cameras, very, very old cameras, they worked at 16 FPS. But these cameras had no sound. They could only record images, and in black and white generally, like the very, very oldest videos you can see. And later, the guys that made cameras wanted to incorporate sound, either for like recording or playing it on the cinema. But the thing is, this is what they invented. You have seen videotapes, right? Like very, very old videotapes, but like this, and they have like these little holes that are used to drag the tape, right? and these are long, 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 very long, and you have the images here. So the thing they invented to put sound into this stuff, they made a special section like here on the side, um, with a sound reading thingy. And if you search for like sound on videotape on Google, you're gonna get something like this. Like it still has the other uh, holes, but it kind of looks like this. The thing is, if you play this sound thingy at 16 FPS, it's not going to work. It just too slow to be read. So they said like, okay, what do we do? Like we have to play the tape faster for the sound to work, and they came to like an agreement that 24 FPS was kind of the middle ground to play the sound and still see the movie kind of okay. That's the reason why you see very, very old films and the characters move very, very fast. Like they look like cartoony, uh, fast walking and doing stuff like that. It's because of that. It's because they are playing the film faster than it was actually recorded. So yeah, it was kind of a big compromise, but that's the reason we use 24 FPS, and it hasn't changed for like 100 years or maybe more. So no, you can tell your friends why. But just remember that for animation in general is always 24 FPS. There are some like exotic animations that go to 30, or I don't know. People like to do like 60 FPS stuff on YouTube, which I think are terrible, but still. But when you're animating for anime or for Western animation or whatever, it's almost always 24 FPS. Okay, so don't forget it. Let me read a bit of your comments. And remember, you can tell me if I'm going too fast, because sometimes I just get lost talking. Film reels, waveforms, human eye reaction. There's some people that say that, but honestly, this is the most accurate explanation I've found. And a lot of old animators had this explanation for it. I remember the guy that explained it better. I think it was Don Bluth on one of his DVDs. That's where I got like the confirmation that this was the reason. 60 FPS on movies. Yeah, like sometimes movies go crazy, and like people when they like machine in between anime on YouTube, they go to 62, which animators hate, honestly. Like, do you guys know why every animator on Twitter hates when they turn anime into 60 FPS? I'll explain you in a few minutes, because I need to explain you something else before, okay? Okay, so we began talking about timing. We're just beginning. So I'm going to give you the most simple visual example. Let's say you have image number 1. Oh, do I have a bigger one? The other day I kind of destroyed my brush palette here, and it was never the same. Let's say you have image 1, then image 2, then image 3. They're in a sequence, right? And they move. So if I go here to the timesheet, let's say my animation lasts for half a second, which is 12 frames, right? Half of 24. The way I distribute these drawings in that time, like in my 12 frames, that's going to be the timing. So if I put my first drawing here, my second drawing here, and my third one here, that's my timing. If I change one of these anyway, like I move it here, that's a different timing. Okay, so when people are discussing about the timing and they're saying that something has a great timing or a bad timing, they're talking about the distribution of the drawings in time. Okay, it is as simple as that. Of course, when you get like really into animation, there's some rules about timing for characters and machines or whatever, but that comes later. Okay, now I just want you to know what timing is. So that's timing. And the other thing we have to talk about is spacing, which is the one that generally confuses a lot of people. Spacing is the physical separation of your drawings. And I have an example for that, because you're just not going to understand if I say it like that. Let's see. Oh, by the way, all of the examples I'm going to show you, or most of them, are from the Animation Survival Kit by Richard Williams, which is like the main basic book that all animators have to read, and you should read it too. Like, do not get discouraged by the cartoony looking characters on the cover. It works for anime too. Like, it's the very basics, and every single animation studio in Japan also has the book, so read it. Okay, let's see if this works. Yeah, you should be able to see the video now, right? Let's see if it plays. So we have this coin moving from the beginning to the end of the sequence in 1 second, right? That's your timing. It is 1 second. That's the duration of the sequence, and this is moving in 24 frames per second. So one drawing per each frame. That's your timing. But now we're going to change the spacing. Did you notice the difference between this one and the past one? The physical separation between all of the drawings here is even, right? But here, he accumulated some of the drawings on the borders, and that's going to create an effect, which is going to be acceleration and deceleration. Notice the timing is the same. It's still 1 second, and it's still one frame, one drawing per each frame. The timing is exactly the same. It begins at the same time and ends at the same time, but the effect that we achieve by changing the spacing of the drawings is different. And that's basically all the spacing does. It creates acceleration and deceleration, and you can use that to simulate a bunch of stuff, like gravity, or in gravity, or force, like to do punches and stuff. Like for fights, you use spacing a lot. But the basic thing about spacing is just acceleration and deceleration. Now, on anime, you probably know that anime works with very few drawings compared to like Western animation, right? Like in Disney, maybe you had sequences with 24 FPS with one drawing per each frame, but on anime we use way less drawings because it's just cheaper. Like doing full 24 FPS animation is extremely expensive, so we use way less drawings. We use half or even a third of that sometimes. So Sometimes we don't have enough drawings to do some fancy spacing like this, but we still manage, and I'm going to show you how. Let me close this for a bit and read a bit of your comments. Someone's saying 60 FPS, ignore the intention and the spacing. Yeah, basically that. Um, when you transform something from 24 FPS to 60 FPS, you destroy the spacing that the animator did. And that basically ruins the whole animation. Even if to someone like with not a very trained eye, it might look kind of okay. Most people that have watched anime for a bit notice that it's all messed up. That's why animators hate the 60 FPS filter they do on YouTube. Yeah, just as dislike because it ruins the artistic vision behind the animation. Yeah, um, it's basically that. And the other reason is um, because the the in betweens the machine adds are like um, they basically look terrible because they're all like blurs and stuff, and that also messes the animation a lot. Um, there's also animation that I see on YouTube that look very robotic in the movement and visuals. Like there's, I don't know which one specifically you're talking, but there's bad animation everywhere. Mainly on threes, on twos, and threes. Yeah. Um, maybe I should explain you that with the timesheet. So again, let's say whatever animation we're doing is 12 frames long, right? Uh, you'll hear a lot from now on people talking about animating on ones, on twos, on threes, on fours, and I'm going to explain you what that is. When they say animating on ones, it's basically animated on 24 frames. That means I have to do one drawing for each one of these frames. Right? Ignore the circles. I'm going to explain you that later. That's animating on ones. When they say animating on twos, it's basically just letting these drawings occupy 2 frames instead of 1. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Half the amount of drawings because they occupy double the space. Honestly, anime is very hard to see anime animated on twos because it is still very expensive. You can see parts of some sequences animated on twos, but it's still very difficult. I always tell this story though. My first anime job was on Black Clover. I don't remember which episode, but I didn't know this very well. Like, I kind of knew how it worked, but it wasn't like completely clear to me. And I animated all of my sequences on twos, and they were probably so rushed on the production that they didn't correct that. And though my animation looks kind of okay, they also look kind of how do I say this? Kind of melty and weird because they just have too many drawings. So you have to be careful when you want to animate something and you say like, okay, more drawings, it looks better. Like, not necessarily. Like, for anime, people that watch anime are used to watch animation on threes and fours. So if you show them something on twos and ones, it looks kind of weird to them, unless it is very very necessary for the cut, like for fights and stuff, or for very very delicate movements. You can use ones and twos, but generally you use threes and fours. And threes and fours are the same. Like, instead of occupying 1 or 2 frames, you make them occupy 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see? And force is the same. 1, 2, 3. That's how you reduce the amount of drawings. Now, force is kind of the limit, because when you pass 4 frames, one drawing per 4 frames, like if you go into 5s, for example, things begin to look, how's this word? Things begin to stop. They begin to look static. Okay, so 4 is the limit. If you go to 5s, your animation will stop in the eye of the viewer, and it will look very, very jumpy. Okay, so force is the limit, and this is kind of what we use the most. Now, when you are more experienced animating, and you kind of get used to the timesheet and all of that, and your eyes become more accustomed to seeing timing, you will notice that most animations are actually a mix of all of this, or even once. Like, I don't go to a cut and I said, like, okay, I'm going to animate everything on 4s. Like, that doesn't go through my mind. Like, I'll use 4s when I need to, and then I'll combine it with 3s if some part of the movement needs it, and I'll put 2 if it needs it. You see? It's a mix of everything, and that's called frame modulation. When you use a combination of all of this to do your cut, okay? This is what most professional animators do, okay? We don't think of each one of these when we're doing it, okay? Any questions? Like, we're getting into a bit of math, so even I get like lost a bit when we talk about this. Is that A4? Yes, technically, but Japanese industry use A4 paper. That's the first exercise on the book. Yes, mainly on 3s, 2 or 3s. Choppy, yes, choppy animation. It starts looking like a slideshow. Yeah, we all know some anime with a slideshow that looks like a slideshow. I've studied some scenes that they seem to intercalate on 2s and 3s in action scenes. Yeah, it depends on the animator really. But it's just my experience. Generally, when I do action scenes, I generally get into 2s and 1s, because stuff like, for example, fluttering of the hair and the clothes and stuff, when there's a lot of energy, like a lot of wind, or the characters are moving like very, very fast, you generally have to go into 1s to make it look good. Maybe I'll show you some examples later if I can find them. Which is usually used for slow-mo. Generally 2s and 1s. Yeah, because 3s for slow motion, they generally look very choppy. So it's generally 2s and 1s. Could you show us that frame modulation in a timeline, like in the timesheet? Yeah, I can probably show you some timesheets. I'll show you a lot of timesheets. Just wait for it. I'll show you a lot of timesheets in the next following streams, but maybe I can just give you an example. It's just too simple. So frame modulation would be like, I don't know, you do this on 2s or 3s, 2, but you think 3 should go here, and something's happening here, and you change to 2s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And for some reason, you want to end the last frame here, like 6. And that's your animation. Like you began doing it on 3s, then you change to 2s, and then this part is in 1s. So that's basically frame modulation. Like you use all of this, or some of them combined, which is what animators do. Like, as I said, like we don't think like, oh, we're going to do all of this in 4s or all of this in 3s, unless we're doing something very, very mechanical, like a walk or something like that. Maybe you can then have a kind of a formula to do that kind of stuff. But for most animations, you just mix everything. And the thing you have to be careful though, like because we say like we mix everything, but you don't have to abuse the amount of drawings, because the thing is, remember, when you get into 2s and 1s, that means you have to do a lot of drawings. Like you have to draw a lot, you spend a lot of time drawing, and the people that come after you, like the people that clean your drawings and that paint your drawings, they all take a lot more time, and time is money. So when you get into 2s and 1s, the thing begins to get very expensive, so you have to use them carefully, right? If you don't, the director or the producer will just take your stuff and correct it and get rid of most of your drawings. So you don't get into unpleasant surprises later when you watch your animation on the TV and it has less drawings. You have to be careful from the beginning not to abuse the amount of drawings. Okay? Okay. Let me see the chat. Do you do the timesheet before you animate or after, or do you do it at the same time? Okay, this one depends. When you're working digitally, like me, you can do the timesheet at the end, which is what I generally do. Okay, I like to just focus on the drawings, and I have the timing on my timeline here on the software, so I don't have to keep track of the things on the timesheet while I'm drawing. So I do the timesheet at the end because I'm working digitally. When you're working on paper, like on a light table and paper, like a lot of people in Japan, you generally begin doing the timesheet at the beginning because you cannot play your animation like in the computer. So the timesheet helps you keep track of your timing. Okay? So people that work on paper generally do the timesheet at the beginning. And then you can do the timesheet at the beginning, and they generally have to edit it at some point, like they have to erase it and change a couple of stuff after they do their pencil test, which is like a very rough playing of the thing that they do with a camera or the scanner. But yeah, that's the general rule. Like if you do it digitally, you can do it at the end, but on paper you generally do it at the beginning. Okay, I see. Some people are able to animate on 4s and it still looks fast, like So Miyazaki, and I don't understand how. It generally has to do with spacing. When I have that kind of question, I just download their animations and play it on TV Paint or whatever, like frame by frame, and I try to decipher their secrets. But if it's on 4s and it looks fast, it generally has to do with a very smart use of timing and spacing. Someone's asking, don't you have to notate 4s differently on the timesheet? I don't think so. I don't know what you mean, but not really. I don't think so. Someone's saying, I have a lot of trouble with that. Yeah, man, it's complicated at the beginning. It took me several months to get used to it. I actually had to like really train myself to begin thinking on 3s and 4s and stuff. But yeah, it's hard at the beginning. So I'm saying, isn't it funny that 24 is a multiple of 2, 3s, and 4s, and 6s? Yeah, it's very funny and very convenient. You'll see it later on the when you get the duration of uh, your cuts later on the storyboards and stuff. Like it's almost always a multiple of 24, uh, because that just helps you distribute your drawings better. Someone saying, I've seen animators do special effects like water in twos, and they move the camera between each frame. Yeah, there's a lot of like cheap tricks to achieve stuff with less drawings. Um, with effects, for example, like water can be animated on twos, like it would still look good. But the example I always remember is on Makoto Shinkai movies, uh, especially the very first movies, like 5 centimeters per second and Garden of Words and that kind of stuff. You might notice that characters actually walk on fours, which is kind of weird, right? Because you generally associate Makoto Shinkai like with like very fancy animation, and their characters walk in fours. And how does he do it to so it doesn't look choppy? Well, he puts the rain on top, and on the frames that the character is not moving, he moves the rain. So uh, every frame there's something moving, and it creates the illusion that there's more drawings. I discovered that like several years ago, and I was very impressed. Like it's actually very smart. Um, Timing and spacing is still something I'm just slowly getting. Yeah, it's hard to grasp. Like it's actually they're very simple concepts, but there's just too many different ways to use it. So hopefully you guys understood that, and if you didn't, you can just ask me again. I'll definitely go through this again. Um, Best incentive is with 3s and 4s. I have to make less drawings. Yeah, you have to get used to 3s and 4s. Sadly. Someone's asking. It has nothing to do with the stream, but how good is your Japanese? Not excellent. I'm studying. I study every day, but I'm still kind of. Um, I still talk like a baby, and I'm trying to learn kanji now. But that will take a while. I'm trying to learn like 5 to 10 kanjis every day, which might seem like a lot, but I have to because I'll eventually move to Japan, like probably this year, and I have to eat and not get arrested, so I have to learn the language somehow. I love Makoto Shinkai movies. Yeah. Uh, Actually, if you don't mind, can you break down timing again? Okay. Um, let's go through it one more time. So, timing has to do with how do you distribute your drawings on time. Let's say this time our animation, the total duration is 24 frames, which is 1 second. Right? This is all of the frames we have to make our animation. Now let's say we have 5 drawings just inventing, right? We have 5 drawings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The way we distribute this in time, remember this is the same as the timeline here in your software. The way we distribute this is going to be your timing. So let's say we want to put 1 here, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, and 5 here. that's your timing, right? And if you play this on your software, it will look a certain way. If you redistribute all of this, like let's say you get rid of this, and you do it like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this one just stays there. The distribution is totally different, and when you play it, it will look way faster, right? Because everything is using less time. Everything happened in less time. You see, this took more time than this, and it's a different timing. That's basically timing. It is the way you distribute your drawings on time. Okay? And one important thing that you have to remember, and I'll go a bit more in depth with that, is that you can only perceive timing when you're animating. You can only perceive timing here on the timesheet. I'll explain you what I mean. Timing lives on the timesheet. Learn it like that. And spacing lives on the layout template or on your screen, basically. Because if I do a drawing here, 1 and 2. Let's say we have these two drawings and we put the light table to see them both at the same time, right? Here on the screen, we can only perceive the spacing between these two, like the physical distance between these. But if I only see these, like if I'm only seeing the drawings and I'm not playing the animation, I cannot perceive the timing. There's no way I can know where in time these drawings are located. For that, I have to go to the X sheet or timesheet, right? And here on the timesheet, there's no way I can perceive the physical distance of the drawings. Nothing here tells me the spacing of the drawings, only the time. Okay? So I think some of you might need some time to absorb all of this because it's kind of complicated, but for the time, learn it like this. Timing only exists on the timesheet, and spacing only exists on the layout template or the place where we draw everything. Okay? Then you can replay this a lot of times, or I don't know, ask me again, and I'll try to explain you again. But for the moment, just remember that. Let me read some more comments. Oh, there's no more comments. Nice. Let me drink a bit of more of my thing here. It's so funny how the model does when you're drinking something. My Uber Eats came super late, so I had to eat my stuff just a few minutes before beginning, so I'm still kind of digesting everything. Okay, do you guys have any question about this? We're going to go a bit more into spacing later on the stream. Okay? Timing is basically that, like, it doesn't have any more science for the moment. But spacing needs a bit more explanation, so I'm going to explain you something else for the moment, and then I'm going to go back to spacing. Okay? Okay. Let's erase this for the moment. And this. So the next thing I want to explain you, which is also something a lot of people have confusion with, is the types of drawings or the names of every drawing. What do I mean by that? Let's say you have an animation with like 100 drawings. like very complex animation with a lot of in-betweens and stuff. And the thing is, every single one of those drawings uh, has a name or a category they belong to, and you have to know that very well. So I'm going to explain you the types of drawings you have. If you're a bit into animation or anime or into the Sakuga community or something, you probably hear most of the time about keys or keyframes. Most of you have heard about this, right? Keyframes are the storytelling drawings. I'm going to explain you in a bit, right? I just want to write it. Storytelling drawings. Let's use the typical Richard Williams example, where a guy enters a room and again you're gonna get used to my stick figures. He enters the room, he crouches to pick up a pencil or a pen or something, and then he walks a bit more and he writes something on a chalkboard or a writing board. He writes something, right? There's a lot of drawings here. Like if you want to animate this, you'll have to animate the character walking here and crouching and then getting up again and walking a bit more and doing all of this writing here, right? That would be a lot of drawings. But to tell the story, like in the most basic way, you only need these 3 drawings. The guy enters the room, he crouches to pick up something, and then he writes. Those are the most basic drawings to tell your story. And those are the keyframes. Okay? That's the most accurate explanation of it. The thing is, in Japanese animation, people do not have so many names for drawings. So it creates the illusion that Western animation, which is where this example comes from, uses more keys than Japanese animation. It will be more clear when I'll tell you about the other kinds of drawings. The other kinds of drawings you have probably heard of are in-betweens. Right? Most of us know what in-betweens are. When you do your keys, for example, 1 and 2, if you want this movement to be smooth during time, you have to make more drawings here, right? But these drawings are not like storytelling drawings. They're just feeling like in-between drawings, right? That's basically those are basically in-betweens. Drawings that you have to add for the animation to look smooth. You probably have heard about in-between guides too, if you're a bit into anime Sakuga things, which I'm going to explain you to. But the thing that most people haven't heard of, at least in anime, are extremes. And here's where the confusion happens. Extremes are every single time something on your animation changes direction, like it's moving in any direction and then it changes or stops or do something, you have to add an extreme. Like for example, a blink. Your character might be doing something important like on your keys, but at the same time he's blinking, right? It's not a very important movement for the storytelling, but there's something changing direction. Like the eye is changing direction because it goes from open to close and then open again. Each one of these poses are an extreme, and then you do in betweens in between of this, right? But every time something changes direction, you have to add an extreme, and the confusion happens because for Japanese animation, keys and extremes have the same name. They don't make the difference between keys and extremes. So that's why people think like, oh, like Western animation uses way less keys than Japanese animation, but that's not the case. It's just a naming thing. Uh, Technically, Japanese animation uses the same amount of keys and extremes, but they just have a different way to name them. Do you guys kind of understand what I'm talking about? Let me see the comments. You have a nice voice. Oh, thank you. Nice. Thank you for the compliment. Do you switch back and forward between the canvas and the timesheet while you're drawing? Yes, sometimes. Are anime fights usually done on threes and twos? A mix of all of them, but generally for fights you need more drawings. Yes, very quiet. I'm quiet. Like you cannot hear me well. Let me know, so I can adjust it. Someone's saying I'm a bit confused. Ka equal extremes or equal extremes. Ka. I don't know what Ka means, but I can explain you again maybe if you didn't understand the explanation. Oh, let me write the thing by the way, so you can maybe watch it later. Every change of direction okay. In betweens we already talked about. It's drawings you add to make things look smooth. The animation. Okay. And remember, in Japanese animation, these two have the same name. Keys for Japan. In Western animation, they are very very separated. The other drawing you have probably heard of is in between guides. And with in between guides come breakdowns. Which you have probably heard if you have studied Western animation. In between guides and breakdowns are exactly the same for practical purposes. It's just that we call them in between guides in Japan and breakdowns in Western animation. It took me a long time to figure this out. It's super simple, but at that time, no one was explaining this. I just had to figure it out. But they're exactly the same. What's an in-between guide? Let me show you an example. in between guides. So an in-betweener, which is the person that after you draw your keys and your extremes and you kind of do your layout, um, like the job of the key animator, uh, you don't do all of the drawings yourself most of the time when you're working professionally. Uh, you do only the most important drawings, your keys and extremes, and maybe some in-between guides, which I'm going to explain. And you send that, and then after it goes to the director and the animation director, it goes to in-betweening, and someone else is going to do your in-betweens. Okay, that's another worker at the studio. And most in-betweeners are trained to do mechanical in-betweens. What do I mean by that? Let's say we have this animation, which is a head turn. This is your first drawing. Let me here. One. Or your first key, and your second key is here. So this is a head turn. The guy is looking here, and then he's looking on this direction. And you have to do in-betweens in the middle, because otherwise it's just going to be two poses and it's going to look extremely choppy, right? It's not going to be an actual animation. So you have to do more drawings here in the middle to fill the timing. If you give this to an hypothetical in-betweener, he might do something like this. A drawing right in the middle of the action. Right? That's kind of the most basic drawing to fill this this movement. Just the middle pose. But the thing is, some acting stuff or movements from characters and things more complex, some more complex movement, if you just do the mechanical in-betweens on them, they look very robotic. They don't look natural at all. This is like the most basic example, which is something that both Western animation and anime ask you to do. When you're doing a head turn, for example, they generally ask you to offset the position of the head a bit. Like, for example, here we're doing kind of an arc instead of just doing it straight like before. And they ask you for a blink in the middle. So the character's looking this direction. Then when he's turning, his head is offset a bit and he blinks. And then he opens his eyes again and looks at the other direction. This is kind of an actual natural movement, because when you're looking at something at a certain distance and then you turn your head and look at something at a different distance, your eye muscles have to reset to refocus on the other object, right? So for that, you generally unconsciously blink in the middle. Now, you might turn your head now and try to do it and you say, I'm not blinking, right? But it's kind of an acting, a character acting basic that they ask you all the time. Like in anime, they generally ask you to do that, unless the character is like very afraid or very tense, and then he just move his head like without any blinking. But most of the time, they ask you to do this. But if you just give the in-betweener these two poses and say, do an in-between in the middle, the in-betweener will have almost no choice but to do the mechanical middle pose. Because the in-betweener generally doesn't have much decision on the thing. He just follows instructions most of the time. Okay? We're talking about a very hypothetical in-betweener. Most in-betweeners are very experienced and they already know how to correct stuff. But we're talking about like a very, very basic in-betweener, okay? If you just tell him to do an in-between, he's just going to do the mechanical one. But if you want to do the actual acting thingy in the middle, you do an in-between guide. And an in-between guide is an in-between, but with a hint. Like, for example, let's say this character also has hair and ears. Like, it has a bit more details, right? An in-between guide could be something like this. Just like the structure of the character and the thing you want to change, like the offset and the blink. You don't even have to do the mouth, for example. You don't have to draw all of the detail on the in-between guide. You just do a structure and the thing you want to change, like a hint. And then the in-betweener is going to complete the drawing. He will know that, oh, this is not just a mechanical in-between. It has something else, right? And in-between guides are generally marked with a triangle. You have seen I've been doing circles all the time. That's for keys. Keys, just circles. In-between guides, just triangles. And in case you see, let's say 1, 1, you see a drawing without any number in the timesheet, for example, is generally an extreme. There's animators that do make the difference between these, and some others don't. But that's basically what it means. Oh, I did a 2. 1. Okay? Keys, circles, in-between guides, triangles, extremes, no symbol. So this would be a triangle. And how do you number these things? This is something that confuses a lot of people, even not only beginners, but some more experienced people also get confused. How do you number this? Like, because you have 1 and 2, but then you have something in the middle. Some animators do decimals. Like, for example, if it's right here in the middle, it could be 1.5. Or if you have more, for example, if you have 3 in-between guides, let's just say, like here and here, you would have 3 triangles. You could do 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. And that would be a valid numbering. Some other animators in Japan do katakana. They do a, for example, and then they go a, I, u, e, o in katakana. But then if you have a lot of in-between guides, you get you exhaust your katakana. What I do, and I think is like the simplest way to do it and the clearest way to do it, I just use normal numbers. If I have an in-between guide here, this would be my 2, and this would be my 3. So you don't have to add like decimals or weird numbers that confuse people when they read your timesheet or your drawings. I generally do these numbers at the very end of my animation, because when you're working on a software, you have your drawings here on your timeline. You don't really need to number them from the beginning. I generally number everything at the end, but that's my personal thing. And I don't know if at some point I'm doing an animation here. Let's say I have 1, 2, or 2, 3, 4. And at some point, I say, oh, at the end, I have an in-between guide here. Like I need it because it didn't look as I thought it was going to look. So I'm going to add a drawing here. I could do 1.5, for example, because otherwise, if I continue with my normal numbering thing, I would have to rename all of this, and sometimes it's not just all of this; it's the whole the whole timesheet, and that's a big waste of time. So you can decide which one to use at a certain time, as long as it is clear and easy to read. You can use it on the timesheet, okay? But that's the reason why you're sometimes like reading a timesheet from a random anime and it has decimals in the middle. And people get very scared about that. Okay? Am I losing you already? Let me read your comments further. Someone's asking, what software are you using? T-Paint. It says here on my under my model. Hey, Amphibie. Nice to see you here. Breakdowns of the triangles? Yes. Are the extremes those drawings that are at the beginning and at the end of a certain movement? I guess you could call it like that. Yeah, they're technically the extremes. Every time you make a change of direction, you need to do the extreme drawings, right? Otherwise, you don't have a reference of the movement. So yeah, those are the extremes. Someone's saying, bro, I just had this confusion yesterday with my animation director. How do I annotate in between guides? Do you mean breakdowns? Yeah, it's breakdowns. Yeah, they should be more places where they explain that. But in between guides are just breakdowns. They are the same. Someone's asking, can you do an example of how to do Gose on Clip Studio? Also, your live have been super helpful. The thing is, I don't use Clip Studio. I don't really use it for anything, so I'm not the best person to do that. But Gose is something you can do on any software, really. You can just do it on paper. So that will come later when I do the layout stream, probably next week. So yeah, I'm going to show you how to do that because it's very basic. So have a bit of patience, okay? So I'm saying, how do animators know how many in-betweens to add? I've seen that they draw the spacing chart. Yeah, I'm going to explain you that. I'm going to explain you that right now. To guide, but how do they know the result will be good? Or they just have to imagine it? I'm going to explain you that. Let me just read the comments. Rare streams. Did I say that? Numbering systems. Numbering in katakana. Yeah. Yeah, it was very confusing when I first found out about that. Does this stream stay uploaded? Yes. Yes, it will be here forever. What software are you using? T-Paint. And for compositing, generally After Effects. Or you can do compositing on T-Paint too, but almost no one does. Okay, I have to explain the spacing charts. They're very easy, so don't worry. So, people were asking about how do you know how many in-betweens to do. Let's go to our timesheet again. And say our animation is 1 second long. So I'm going to cut it here at 24. And let's say I'm just going to distribute kind of randomly. Let's say I have five drawings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How do I know what in-betweens to do, or how many in-betweens to do? It basically comes down to the kind of movement I want. Remember I told you that when frames last for more than 4 frames, like this one for example, how many frames is it's maintained here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's here for 5 frames. That means this drawing is basically static on the screen. It stopped. For the eye of the viewer, it stopped. If we assume this is a continuous movement, like for example, this is not held here, like we don't want this to be stopped, or this one for example, we want this to be a smooth movement or an uninterrupted movement. We have to do something here because we don't want the movement to stop. So if I want to do like like 3s and 4s for example, that's kind of the amount of drawings I'm aiming for. I can do for example one in between here, and I already solved that problem because now this drawing is maintained for 2 frames. I have a new drawing. This is the symbol for in between, by the way, like a diagonal thingy, like line there. This is the symbol for in between. Some people do something like this. That's not correct. Okay, do not extend it for the whole square. It's like a thingy. It's like a shorter line. Okay, so that every time you see something like that, it's an in between. Some people do it like inverted like that. That's also okay, but generally do it like this. So now this drawing number 1 is here for 2 frames. This drawing, the in between, is here for 3 frames because it's 1, 2, 3. Let's see the next one. This one is here for 4 frames. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's kind of in the limit, but let's say I play my animation and it doesn't bother me. Like it looks okay, so I don't have to put anything here necessarily. I don't know if I play it and it looks slow or choppy, I can do something here, for example, and I fill that space with an in between. But let's say you don't have to. This one here, it's held for too much time. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, same as the first one. So I can put one in between here to fill that space. Do I have to put it all the time in the middle? Not necessarily. If I want to push the timing a bit, maybe I want to favor this drawing or this drawing, I can do it here, for example, or even here. It could happen. Okay, and now for example, let's say I did kind of an extreme thing here. 3 is here only for 1 drawing, and this in between is here for 4 drawings. It's very unusual, but it could happen. Like, it depends on you, honestly. But normally I will do it here. So everything is a bit more well distributed. Here, same. I have to fill this space with something. I can put an in between there. And here, doing in betweens after keys is kind of unusual, but it can happen. What normally would happen here is that this is the last drawing. 5 is the last drawing, and it will generally be held until the end. Like the animation basically stopped there for a few frames. So this frame is here for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's generally not noticeable. Like for example, I think someone said that people generally do not perceive the first like 2 to 4 frames and the last 2 to 4 frames of the animation. Like they happen too fast for the viewer to perceive it, so it's not that important. But for example, if you want this drawing to exit the screen, let's say we're doing something like this. You have a ball here, and you want the ball to exit the the screen. Like you want it here, but you cannot draw something outside technically. Maybe that was not the best example, but let me think how to give you this example. Okay, let's say the ball is exiting, and because you cannot draw anything outside, you do an out notation, which is something you can do to tell the person that's watching your animation that the object actually left the screen. But your drawing number 5, which is this one, it cannot stay here. Like you need more drawings here to make it exit, right? Because it's right in the middle. What you would do here is you already said that it was going to stay out. You would come here after the ending of your animation. I would do an X, which means that the drawing disappears. If I do something like this, for example, 1, 2, and then I do an X, it means this object, this layer of my animation disappeared. Okay, you just erased it. So if you do an X here after the ending of your animation, you can do an in-between here, because now it's an in-between between something that exists and something that doesn't. And you can do an in-between here, which is going to be your very, very last drawing, which is this object almost exiting the screen. Okay, this was not the best time to teach you this because it's kind of confusing, so sorry, but if I didn't explain it to you, it was going to be even more confusing. Do you guys still understand what I'm talking about? Let me read a bit your step. Okay, no one has said that they're lost, so that's okay. Someone's saying, did you hear that Colombian girl story? Oh my god. Yeah, I did. We can talk about that at the end. But yeah, like everyone heard about that. It's kind of terrible. Yeah, we can comment that at the end. Okay. No questions? Remember, you can ask me anything. I know I talk a lot, and I can. If I lose you, just ask me. By the way, how much time have I been here? We have been here for. Where's my time? Oh, 1 hour, almost 1 hour and a half. Okay, we still have time, but I have to go a bit faster. Okay, so that was the kind of the answer of how do you choose how many in-betweens you do. You basically look at the timesheet and try to fill the spaces. If you don't want your animation to stop moving, okay? If you don't want that, you have to fill the space. And if you look at here, like I'm working basically on 3s and 2s at this time. How is that? This one lasts for 2, 3. This one is 4, 2, 3, 2, 3. You see, 2s and 3s most of the time, but it can vary, of course. If this was like Disney super expensive animation that has to move in 24 and be very fancy, you would have to fill all of this with in-betweens, because your animation shouldn't stop moving at any point, right? and you have a lot of money and you can do a lot of drawings. Look how the amount of drawings multiplied a lot. Like, it's kind of terrible. Like, you think it's not a big deal, but your animation is now like 3 times more expensive. So you have to be careful. So that's how you choose how many in-betweens you do. But what other people were asking was about spacing charts. When you look at some animations, especially like rough anime or rough drawings for anime, you generally see something like this. You see whatever character on the screen, right? And on the side, there's something like this. Have you seen stuff like that? Like, it can look very different. Like, it can look like this, on like this. These thingies are spacing charts. What they basically tell you is how to do the spacing on your in-betweens. Let's say, go back to the timesheet of it. You have your first key and your second key. And in the middle, you have 2 in-betweens. Right? This is your animation. But as I said before, the timesheet only tells you about timing, how your drawings are distributed in time. What if I want to know the spacing between these drawings, like the physical distance between these drawings, like this, for example? I said we had your first key and your second key, but in the middle, there's 2 in-betweens. In between. How do I know if the spacing of these in-betweens with the keys is even, or maybe one is closer to 1 and closer to 2, or maybe one is in the middle and the other is in the middle of the middle, or here? The timesheet will not tell you that. That you'll have to see on the spacing chart. Again, 1, 2. Let's say the spacing for this is one in-between in the middle and the other in the middle of the middle. So you kind of have, according to what we talked at the beginning, kind of an acceleration. This is kind of a very soft acceleration, right? Because the drawings kind of accumulate here and then they go very fast from here to here, right? For this, you have to do a spacing chart, and it would be something like this. You do your 2 limits here. You have to imagine 1 and 2 are here. And then I say that one of the in-betweens is here in the middle, right? The symbol of in-between. And the other in-between is in the middle of the middle. And then I do an arrow to tell you the direction of the chart. What do I mean by that? Generally, when you see this on actual anime drawings, they don't have the numbers. They just have the limits, and they generally don't have any number. If I do this without the arrow and without any of this, how do you know the direction of the chart? Because doing it in this direction is very different to doing it in this direction. If you do it in this direction, then you have a deceleration, right? It's inverted. So you have to give me, or give the in-betweener an arrow to tell them, like, yes, this is the beginning of the animation, and this in-between is in the middle of the beginning of the animation, right? Because this one is the opposite. Now, the arrows also are useful to sometimes signal the direction of the movement of whatever you're animating. For example, if this is my first key, and my second key is here, he moved in this direction, right? So I can do my spacing chart with whatever amount of in-betweens, and I do the arrow. The arrow both tell me the direction of the chart and the direction of the movement of whatever I'm animating. So it kind of has a double purpose. I'm going to show you an actual anime example. And I hope I don't get turned into trouble. I don't think so. For showing you actual anime stuff. This is an example everyone on Sakuga Foundry have seen sometimes because it's just my best example. This is from Moriarty, an anime I worked like a couple of years ago, I think. And it has basically what I've been telling you. This is my first drawing, is A1, because it is the first. It's in the first layer. It's here, A. Basically the closer layer to the background. So this is A1, first drawing. And then he does this movement. You see? He kind of rotates his head a bit and raises his hand with this envelope thing. And you can see in the middle, I did the example I told you. I did a blink to help the acting. And that's an in-between guide. This is what I meant when you do an in-between guide. You only have to do part of the drawing, not the whole thing. You generally do like the outside of the character, like the outline or the structure of the character, and the part you want to change, which is, in this case, is the blink. You see? If I didn't do this and just told the in-betweener to do like a normal in-between, it would have looked very, very weird, like very robotic. So it looks a bit more decent with this. And I also gave him the direction, like in which his hand moved, like this arc. So the movement is a bit more clear, right? And here I have my spacing chart. What does this mean? Right in the middle is the in-between guide. This drawing, number 2 on the triangle. You see? This one is right in the middle. Here. And in the middle of the middles, there's 2 more in-betweens. Here you have to imagine that here's 1 and here's 3. Like this drawing. This drawing is here. Forget about this for the moment. I can tell you about that later. Just you have to know that this is the third drawing, A3. So this is basically how this spacing chart works. And the direction obviously goes from 1 to 3, and it goes kind of diagonally here because I think I was kind of telling you the direction of like the movement of the hand. Like I took that direction as a reference. But it could have been like, I don't know. The character kind of looks down, so it could have been something like this, for example. That would have also worked, kind of. Okay, as long as the thing is readable and it doesn't go totally the opposite way it should, it will work. Okay. One thing you have to avoid, and this is something that beginners do sometimes, is to curve your charts. Like some people will do something like this. Like if they see that I'm doing an arc, they would do something like this. And they will curve the spacing chart. They would do something like this. And they would do like the arrow or the arrow here, you should not do this. Please do not do it. Why? Because when you begin adding more stuff like this, like here, the judging the distance between these in betweens becomes very difficult. So please always do your chart straight. It doesn't matter if it's horizontal, if it is vertical, or if it is diagonal. Just do it straight. And I don't know, if you really have to show me the arc, like you really think they're going to miss it and you want to show it, you can maybe curve the arrow, like do something like this, for example. You could do something like this, but please keep the chart straight, okay? Because they really become unreadable very fast. Okay, anyone kind of understanding how spacing charts work? Let me read the comments. Someone's asking, how do you do storyboards? I'm going to do a storyboard stream eventually. But storyboards is like a whole different thing. Like, very, very complex topic. So it needs its own stream. Budget equals smooth animation? Kind of. Yeah, kind of. Not all the time, but generally. Someone's asking, why the arrow at the end? Because you have to signal the direction of the chart. Remember, doing something like this. It's not the same as doing something like this. It's the opposite. So you have to give me the direction so I know if the thing is accelerating or deaccelerating. Some people do the arrow here. Like they kind of mix the chart and the arrow, which is okay. I do not do it because I think it can be a bit confusing sometimes, but that's kind of a personal preference. You can do it here. Okay? It looks like a, they call it like a fish bone because it looks kind of like a fish. Okay. I've seen that they divide spacing charts into middles, like 1-2s, 1-3s, 1-4s, or something. Yeah, spacing charts should always, most of the time, work on middles. This is a good topic. Like, thank you for reminding me. When you have 1 and 2, like your two keys, let's say you have 3 in-betweens. 1, 2, and 3. For the spacing, you generally want to have at least a middle. You want to split the chart in the middle with some drawing, and then the other drawings occupy the middle of the middles. Like, for example, I can do this and this. You see? One in between in the middle and the other in betweens in the middle of the middle. Or if I want an acceleration, I can do one in between in the middle, the other one in this middle, and the other one here in the middle of the middle of the middle. Why is that? It is because you're trying to help the in-betweener. Because in-betweening works as it sounds. You do a drawing in between other two drawings. If someone asks me to do the in-between between these two drawings, the easiest way I can figure this out is do a middle. Is do a drawing right here. Like this is the easiest way to judge the distance. If you, and let's say that I have the other two in-betweens that were going to be like this. Middle, the middle, middle, the middle. We have one in the middle. The other one is in the middle of the middle. So it would be right here. It's very easy to get the distance because it's in the middle of these two. And the other one here would be right here in the middle of these two. When you work on middles, judging the distance between the drawings is very easy. But if I give you something like this, for example, here, this is very hard to actually guess. Like, where in the hell is this? Like, I don't already have the middle. Like, is it here, or is it here? Like, it suddenly becomes very hard to guess accurately, and you have to be very accurate when you're in betweening. Otherwise, your animation like melts and goes to hell. So to do that, for example, if I had just had one in between, but I really want it here because I want kind of an acceleration, but I can only use one drawing, you can do something like this. You can split the spacing chart in the middle with a fake in between, which I call it, and then you do the in between, just so you are helping the in betweener know that you're kind of making the middle of an image that doesn't exist. Like this would be like a fake middle here, and your actual in between would be here. And then when you're done drawing, you can just get rid of this one, and you have an accurate in between here. You see? That's why you do middles on the spacing chart. In anime, you might see something like this. Which is called thirds, because you split the spacing chart on 3 equal parts with 2 in-betweens. This is not that easy to do. I guess most Japanese and in-betweeners are more used to do this, but honestly, it is also kind of difficult because, again, doing it with a middle is simpler. But you can eventually request thirds. Okay, it's way more common in anime than in Western animation. In Western animation, this is kind of prohibited. Because as Richard Williams says in his book, it's kind of cruel because it's just very difficult to do it accurately. You're kind of killing your in-betweener. What you would do if you really want this distribution, and you don't want to kill your in-betweener, you could do something like this. An in-between and an in-between guide. So you do this drawing, you as an animator, you do your first key, your other extreme, and then you do a bit of this drawing of the in-between guide. So you kind of help your in-betweener with a hint of the drawing so that they don't have to guess like or eyeball all of this thing. Okay? Sadly, if you watch like rough anime animation, like in Sakugabori stuff, you will see a lot of bad spacing charts, like stuff like this, or stuff like, I don't know, like this. This is kind of impossible to do. It's kind of a hell. What will end up happening, like if you do something like this, and you will see like sometimes famous animators just doing this, and it's wrong. It's wrong, because what will end up happening, the in-betweener will receive your animation here, and it will say like, oh my god, again, like this guy is just messing around. So what they will do is reinvent the spacing chart, and they will do middles. they'll try to kind of eyeball it with middles and say like, okay, this, I guess it goes something like this. That's what they will do. Like the in-betweener that receives a terrible spacing shot like this, he will do something like this, and it will probably not be exactly what you envisioned, but it's your fault because you did a terrible spacing chart. That's why sometimes, like Sakuga animators, like guys that do like this incredible fights and stuff, they complain about the in-betweeners, like, oh, the in-betweeners destroyed my animation. They didn't do what I told them. Yeah, yeah, but you did this. Like, what were you expecting? uh, you had to be uh, rational on what you ask from the in-betweener, uh, because they also have to work under the under the clock, right? Um, so yeah, be rational with your um, spacing charts. Otherwise, you'll get some uh, unwelcome surprises. Um, Let me read some more comments. Regarding what you said about things appearing frozen if they last longer than 4 frames, does it depend on the frame rate? And if so, which one were you referring when you said that? It depends on the frame rate, but as I said at the beginning of the stream, the frame rate is 99.9%, 24 FPS. So yeah, it depends on the frame rate, but the frame rate it's always the same. So this all of this timing rules I'm telling you is for 24 FPS. Okay. Is it common to draw the spacing chart vertically or diagonally? Yes, you can. Try not to make something like this, for example. I probably did it here, but uh, yeah. Uh, this one is very diagonal. If I did it now, like this, I did this like 2 years ago. If I did it now, I would probably just have done it horizontally, just because of like format, right? You can do it like this. You can do it vertically, and you can do it diagonally too. Like this is okay. Okay, there's no problem. What you can do, as I said, like is curve it. Never do this, please. Do not do that. When working on layout, do you usually draw out rough in-betweens to check timing and spacing? Yes. Yes, I generally do that. If the movement or the animation is very simple, sometimes I don't need to. But if it's something more complex, yes, I do rough in-betweens, and then I just erase them most of the time. Because you don't need to really send them. Unless they're like important and you want them to follow them 100%, you can transform them into in-between guides and export them, so they have the reference when they're going to in-between your stuff. Someone's saying, is it really an in-between if it uses favoring? Isn't that more of like a breakdown? No, it is an in-between. Like, here's the thing, breakdowns are in-betweens. It's just a naming thing. Every drawing you send to the Dogaman or the assistant animator, like, I have to explain this. In-betweening and cleanup these processes are done by what we call in Western animation assistant animators. And by assistants, I don't mean that they bring your coffee or something like that. Like it has an historical context, but this is how they are officially called, like assistant animators. In Japanese animation, we call them dogaman. Because doga means like something like finished drawing or finished frame or something like that, which is kind of an in between, like in between and cleaned up animation. Uh, we call that doga. So dogaman, the guy who does doga, basically, right? These two are the same. And when we talk about in betweens, in betweens kind of encapsulates in between guides. In between guides and breakdowns because they are the same. In betweens is all of this plus just normal in betweens. So yeah, even if we are favoring like here, these are all in betweens. If I have like a 2 here, like an in between guide, it's still an in between. Like in between guides are in betweens, but just with a hint, right? They are all in betweens because the dogaman or the assistant animator is the one who completes them. That's why they are in betweens, basically. Do you guys get it? Okay. Oh, before I forget, just a tip, which is something I see a lot too. Like even on very experienced animators, they commit this mistake. The extremes of your spacing chart always have to be either keys or extremes. Okay? You cannot have a spacing chart with an in-between guide on the border. Like I don't know, something like this. And some in-betweens here. You cannot do that. Or something like this. The other way around. You cannot do this. You can never have an in-between guide as the extreme of your spacing chart. Why? Because in-between guides are in-betweens. If you have an in-between guide here, it has to be inside of the chart. It would have to be something like this. 1, 2, let's say you have to do something like this. You have to put the triangle inside of the chart because it is an in-between, basically. In-betweens cannot be outside of the spacing chart. Okay? I see that a lot, and it actually doesn't make sense. So be careful when you're working. Okay. Someone's asking, are there weird personalized spacing charts done by certain studios? Generally not. They are very, very standard. What you could find sometimes, which is still weird, is something like this, which it happened to me one time. Sometimes you'll find something like this. A very, very, very long spacing chart thingy with hundreds of lines. I'm not exaggerating, like hundreds and hundreds. And then in the middle of these, you would have one here. Sometimes you'll find stuff like this. And I saw this first on a few books from the end of Evangelion. I And I kind of panicked because I said like, what the hell is this? Like, how do you even read something like this? And the answer is, this is not an in-between, like a spacing chart. It's not actually a spacing chart. This is something called a slug-in. I think I'm writing it okay, but this is how it's called. It's a slug-in. It's basically an informal spacing chart. Like, it is something that you use, you put as a reference, like to say that you are doing a very slow movement, like or something with a ton of drawings that follows like a very specific arc, but it's not actually the official spacing chart. It's just like a guide to like show the director or the animation director, like, I'm doing this movement like very specific, right? But this is not actually a spacing chart. Like, along this, you would find tinier spacing charts that are more readable. Like that, right? Or the other way around. So if you see something like this, eventually do not panic, because it's probably not actually a spacing chart, okay? It's something that is just there as a reference. Apart from that, I don't think I've seen ever something more different, like something more unique or like custom spacing charts. Not actually. There's some format differences between Western and Japanese animation. Like, for example, in Japanese animation, spacing charts can only tell you about spacing. If I do this, one, two, and I do this. If I show you something like this, I am only telling you about the spacing, like only the physical distance of the drawings. I have no way of knowing the timing of this. Like, for that, I have to go to the timesheet to see how these drawings are distributed, because this could be something like this, for example, 1, 2, right? That would be possible, but it could also be something like this, 1, 2, 3, right? Or something longer. I have no way of knowing if I'm only looking at this. This is in Japanese animation. In Western animation, sometimes the spacing chart can tell you the timing. But for that, you need a different format of timesheet. It gets more complicated. And I don't know if I should charge you or give you all of that information now, because you will just get confused. I can tell you later, maybe. Or I don't know. If you guys really want to know, I can tell you at the end. But it's not necessary for Japanese animation. Japanese animation is always like this. Spacing charts only tell you the spacing. Okay. Let me drink a bit of water. Man, I've been talking a lot. Of course, let me know if you get a bit lost. Oh, I get it. You're talking about the weird spacing charts. Thank you. I do that. Yeah. Please don't, or your in-betweener will hate you. Where can I get the time chart? I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know. Can you rephrase the question? I don't really understand. Someone's asking, so when you work on it, you make the approximate animation first and then decide on the in-betweens, drawing the spacing chart. Yeah, I generally begin by the keys, like, of course, and then the extremes, and then if I need some in-between guides, and then I decide the rest of the in-betweens. That's the way everyone should do it, honestly, if you want to not get overwhelmed. Because the problem most most beginners have with animation is that they just get overwhelmed because they don't know where to begin and what to do next and what to do next. So the order is like this. Unless you're doing something very specific, first do your keys, then you do your extremes, then you do your breakdowns or in between guides, which are the same, and then you decide your in betweens. For 99% of the animations you do, you'll have to do something like this, unless you're doing what we call straight ahead. Which is something that is also like part of the animation survival kit, like one of the first things they teach you. This method is called pose to pose. Pose to pose. And straight ahead is basically just you begin drawing, and then you draw the next one and the next one and the next one and the next one, and you basically do not do in betweens. You just keep drawing and filling all of the frames. When do you do this? When do you need to do this? Generally, when you want your animation to be very, very, very dynamic, and you really don't care too much about the shape of the things or the sizes or the consistency. Like, for example, when you're doing special effects like fire or, I don't know, explosions sometimes, or electricity. I use it a lot for electricity because it is very chaotic and you want it to be very dynamic, and you don't really care about like the shape of the things. You do straight ahead because pose to pose is good for consistency and shapes, and this is better for being very dynamic. When you're more experienced and you can you dominate both, you combine them, and you can do like very consistent animation that is also very dynamic, and things look very good. But you kind of have to get used to both first. Okay? Did I go in a tangent? I don't remember what I was what I was supposed to answer. Let me go back to the chat. We were talking about like when do you decide to do the in-betweens. Makes sense? Okay, nice. Looks like an audio waveform. I guess you could say that. Onji, in Naruto, keyframe of Hiran's character has a very long spacing chart with many lines. It was a move of his OZ. I guess like yeah, you can find sometimes very weird spacing, very frightening stuff. And you haven't even got into the frightening timesheets. There's some nightmare timesheets that I'm going to show you eventually. But I'm going to scare you with that later. Someone's saying, I've been using space charts all wrong. I use them to plan my timing. Technically, you could, but not on anime. Not on anime. In Western animation, you can, as I said, you can sometimes have charts that both tell you your spacing and your timing, but not on Japanese animation. Okay? Give me a second. I love this. I'm modeling and rigging with animation class. Nice. Glad it's been useful. How long will you be streaming for? Do you mean now? If you mean now, I'm nearing 2 hours, so I think I should be finishing soon. If you mean like in the future, as long as I can, because there's a lot to talk about, and I like to stream, so as long as possible. Um, where can I download the sheet where you write your in-betweens and keyframes? Go to the Sakuga Foundry Discord that's on the description of this stream, and then you can just ask, because we have all of the links. Maybe for the next stream I should just link directly to the materials. But yeah, join the Sakuga Foundry Discord and you'll have all the materials. Uh, where to learn notations or where to get them? Oh, we're going to go through that on the layout stream, which is coming next. Because notations are a whole different thing. I'm going to give you materials though, so don't get scared. I'm going to explain you the most common notations. You talk about the timesheet. Yeah, that was the answer basically. Go to the Sakuga Foundry Discord. What would they do if a beginner has a mistake in the time chart? If there's a mistake, they will generally correct it. When you send your stuff, your layout or your key animation, it will go through the director first, like the Enshutsu, which is like the episode director, and he will try to correct as much as he can. And if he has time, he will correct your spacing chart and your timesheet. But sometimes there's so little time that they'll just not correct it, and the animation will come out with a mistake. That's the worst case scenario. Will you do live animation streams? Hopefully, yeah. But I think it will be at least a few weeks until I do that, because I have to explain you a lot of things before. Because if I begin just animating and talking about like animation and I haven't explained you like about layout or what I'm doing, it's not going to be that useful. So I want to upload some general information streams first, like this one, and maybe some specific timesheet streams before I begin animating live, so that you can actually understand what I'm doing. Okay. Yeah. Oh man. I have the feeling that I'm forgetting a lot of stuff. No, really. The thing is, like, when you say basic animation, like, it's actually a big topic. But as I said, most of this information is very, very available on, like, either on YouTube or on this animation survival kit. So you can get most of this very well condensed in like very easily. What I try to explain you mostly is like a very general view of the basics and stuff that people makes mistakes about, and things that confuse people when they're going from Western animation to Japanese animation. That's basically what I'm trying to let you know here. Someone's asking, what method is better to learn first? The straight ahead, or I've seen practicing gesture using movie scenes, as you showed on the previews. I think, like, to learn, you should probably begin with pose to pose, I think, because you want to learn the structure you will have to use most of the time when animating. Like 90% of your animations will be pose to pose, and very rarely you will have to do straight ahead stuff. So if you want to learn one of them first, go to pose, and then do straight ahead when you have some free time. Okay? Because for straight ahead, you don't really have to learn too much. Like, you just have to do it and enjoy it. Because there's not too much science. Someone saying you can mention what we can practice. Uh, Man, there's a lot of practice. I would I would tell you to watch this stream a couple more times and take notes of the concepts, because in the following streams we are going to begin like actually drawing, and I'm going to try to apply all of the stuff I'm talking about. So then you'll have like you'll see more exercises and stuff. The animation survival kit, like the book, has a lot of useful exercises, like a lot of walks and mechanisms and things to practice arcs, um, and your timing and your spacing and pose to pose and straight ahead. There's a lot of that on the animation survival kit. We should You should totally read. Like, I will never be able to tell you all of the stuff, all of the important stuff in that book in a single stream. So you should totally take a look. Oh, I know what I'm forgetting, which is actually super important. We have to talk about the 12 principles of animation. Did you guys notice we haven't talked about that? Um, yeah, the people that come from Sakuga Foundry already know what's coming. It's kind of a tiny rant about the 12 principles of animation. Um, but yeah, you if you're here, you're probably heard about the 12 principles of animation, and it's like a list of things that they tell you in animation school that you have to always have in mind when you're doing your animation. You just type the 12 principles of animation in Google, and you'll get them. It's always the same. Uh, Someone's already laughing about this. Um, and it's a list with stuff like timing and spacing and arcs and a lot of stuff I've already talked about. But the thing is, yeah, when you go to school, to animation school, the first thing they throw at you is the 12 principles of animation, and you have to learn them, and they'll make you they'll give you tests if you to see if you remember them and all of that. And the thing is, for me personally, after going to school for a lot of years and working on Western animation and working on Japanese animation and doing hundreds and hundreds of cuts, I don't really think about the 12 principles of animation at all. Like in my daily life, they're they're just not something I consider all the time. And why is that? Like, if everyone tells you it is super important, why don't I take them like as super important? It is because I think the 12 principles of animation are too superficial. They're kind of overrated, um, because you have to know the context or of where the 12 principles of animation came from. Uh, the 12 principles of animation appear on the book that's called Illusion of Life, which is a very, very old book about animation that was written by some very old um, Disney animators, like the very first Disney animators that um, worked on very old films like Snow White and Pinocchio and stuff like that. Those guys wrote a book called Illusion of Life that you guys have probably seen around. Um, and in that book, they talk about the 12 principles of animation. But the thing is, most people at school or animators that know about the 12 principles of animation haven't actually read the book. So they don't know the context of the 12 principles of animation. If you actually read the book and go through all of the list and what the principles of animation are supposed to be, you'll see that the guy that's talking says that the 12 principles of animation are actually some jargon that you would hear around at the studio when the guys were learning how to animate. Because you have to remember, uh, the guys that began like this the studios at Disney, they were not actually animators. Like, animation was very young at that time. They were not um, animators. They came from um, fine arts. They were all like very classically trained animators. I mean, artists. They were not animators. They had to learn how to animate, and they had to invent a lot of the systems we're talking about now. So uh, when they were inventing this kind of stuff, they would like make mental lists about things that worked at that time, and they would have to remember like timing and spacing and things like appeal, for example, which is one of the most general and ambiguous principles of animation, because appeal is like something like making every character like attractive at some point, like in terms of shapes and stuff. Like it's very very general, like, or something like staging. Like staging is more like a cinema thing more than animation specific. It's like putting everything on the right spot to give the right impression about the storytelling and the composition and that kind of stuff. Some of them are very specific, like timing and spacing, and some of them are very very general, like, and they don't tell you much information about. That's why I think the the 12 principles of animation are not actually super useful once you get a bit more experience. They are good to learn, like the very basics. Um, if like you're learning about stretch and squash, and they make you do like the bouncing ball exercise and stuff, like for stuff like that is useful. But then when you animate a lot, a lot, a lot, and for several years, you kind of forget them because uh, you kind of get a bit deeper into the thing. Like if you read the animation survival kit, which is an actual animator's manual, because the illusion of life, the book where the 12 principles came from, is not an animation manual. It is an historical recollection. It's basically a story of how it was at that time at Disney Studios. It's not a manual. It doesn't teach you how to do stuff. The animator survival kit is actually a manual. It's a technical manual. And if you read the survival kit, there's absolutely no mention of the 12 principles of animation as a list. They talk a bit about timing, a bit about spacing, a bit about um, stretch and squash and stuff like that, but they don't give you like the list, because the survival kit just goes way deeper. It teaches you, uh, I would say, like the real stuff. I remember I had this teacher who was an ex Disney animator, and he would tell us that he had like the list of the 12 principles of animation, like pasted on his light table at work, and every time before he would deliver any cut, he would go through the list and see if he applied all of the principles of animation. And I'm like, oh, man, like that's not really necessary. Maybe it is necessary for his kind of animation, because remember that Disney used to make very specific kind of animation. Like uh, at first it was kind of realistic, like Snow White, and then it got kind of cartoony, like uh, a bit of like rubber hose thingies. Uh, they were very specific. Like the characters were kind of bouncy, and they were kind of soft, and they were kind of deformed with certain movements. So for that kind of stuff, I can see why you would go through all of the principles of animation. But for things like anime, for example, you don't really go through all of that. Like for example, most anime uh, is very solid in terms of drawing, so you almost never see a stretch and squash, unless you're doing like, I don't know, a fight or something, or some comedy where you kind of deform the characters. You see, so you don't really have to apply all of that stuff for every kind of animation. Okay. I think the 12 principles of animation are kind of a marketing thing, um, to kind of promote the book and kind of the old Disney style. But for real life animation, like day to day animation, where you have to do all kind of cuts or and all kinds of styles, it's not really that useful once you get a bit deeper into how to do animation. Okay, the most important ones are timing and spacing. Those are, I would say, like 90% of the principles of animation, and the others you will know eventually when to apply them and when not to apply them. Okay. Okay, let me read the comments. I don't remember the 12 stuff. Yeah, like I honestly cannot remember all of them. Like I have to read them again. Three of them are just normal drawing stuff, like appeal and staging. Like, yeah, they're very general. Um, if my teacher heard you say that, he would kill you. Yeah, I first said this like publicly when I was studying at university, and they almost burned me alive, both the teachers and the students. But every single day I keep animating, I convince myself more on this position. Like as I said, the 12 principles are very good to learn, but you will eventually leave them behind. I can guarantee it. Um, when is the anime survival kit coming out? Honestly, I have no idea. I'm not in charge of that project, so I couldn't tell you. The book was made by two of the OG Disney 12 old men. Yeah, those guys. Uh, and others are about how to recreate physics and reality. Yes, but honestly, very specific physics on a very specific reality. So you have to be careful when you use them. So the 12 principles are basically notes from back in the day. Yes, you have to read them with the context in mind. And that's the thing, like, as I said, most of the people that talk about the 12 principles, they haven't read the book. They haven't read the book because the book says it. It says like something like very like these are not like unmovable principles. It's just a list of things that you would hear around the studio, and they are not like um, absolute uh, things that you cannot ignore. It says it in the book, so please read that and have it in mind. Okay. Um, someone says, yeah, but I feel it's still relevant to animation. The other things are more or less just stuff any illustrator will know. As I said, it's good that you know them. Like, I think you have to know them and you have to go through them, but you will eventually learn better stuff when you have a bit more experience. Someone's saying, I think Gainax Trigger are the only anime studios I know that really utilize stretch and squat. You can use it on very different, like in a lot of different types of animation. Like, yeah, Trigger has been trying to combine anime and cartoon for a lot of years, uh, with several degrees of success. I think the best one they did when they actually nailed it was in Uchu Patrol Luluko. I think that was the best animation uh, in terms of just animation that Trigger has done. And I think the other ones have kind of been like more or less successful. But yeah, like Trigger intentionally tried to mix a lot of cartoony things into their anime. Um, I thought that only the principles that deal with how to recreate physics were important. Um, I mean, as I said, it's important that you know them, but you also have to know when to use them and when not to. I remember when watching a transmission by animator Aaron Blaze, where he commented on some people forgot that it is important to remember that you are moving something that is alive. Um, yeah, but the thing is, you are not always moving something that is alive. You sometimes have to move stuff that is not alive. Like, for example, machines. When you're animating machines and you want to make them very credible, you generally do not use a lot of the principles of animation. Like, for example, anticipation. one of the principles of animation. Anticipation is for living things. But if you're doing machines, you don't use anticipation if you want to make them very realistic, because machines do not anticipate because they don't have muscles, right? Unless you want to do like some kind of cartoony, more like a special type of machine, right? But that's the kind of thing I'm telling you. Like, you have to know what you're animating and decide by yourself when to use that principles and when not to. I love Aaron Blaze, by the way. I think he's great. I had a teacher, one of my teachers, that worked with Aaron Blaze when he was very young, and he said that Aaron Blaze was basically kicking everyone's ass in Disney, and that he was a very nice guy, but everyone was jealous of him because he was just the best. Those were great stories. Someone's saying the 12 old men don't even follow their own rules. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I think they eventually got so experienced that, as I said, they didn't even think about the stuff they established anymore. Like, for example, Milton Cole, who was arguably the best of the 12 guys, and was the teacher of one of the teachers of Richard Williams. He was kind of the best animator in the world, Milton Cole. He would do the absolute opposite of everyone in Disney. Like, he was very, very contrarian to the other 12 guys, but he was so good that no one could correct him. So yeah, he would just do his thing, and he was the best. So yeah, you have to know, again, when to use the stuff and when not to. Someone's saying, I've been drawing without music since your live stream a while back, and it's tremendous how much better I got. Right? Yeah, you just have to persist for a bit, and the change is very, very noticeable. I'm happy you tried it. As I said, I'm kind of in a vacation period now. Like, I had a lot of work and then I got sick, but now I'm okay and I have some free time, and I'm trying to come back just to draw for practicing again. So maybe I'll do some streams just practicing drawing, and for some of you it might be some like kind of silent streams of me just drawing, but I think it might be useful. And why draw alone when you can just stream also? Like, two birds in one shot. Someone's saying, Trigger's Canada style animation looks like the opposite of Disney animation to me. Canada was very special. Yeah, he's a great dude too. Like the original Canada. It's a very great, like, it's a cool guy to study. He was very good. Like, for example, Miyazaki loved him. Miyazaki would fight other studios just to have Kanata on his movies. Sadly, he passed away kind of young, but there's a lot of interesting stuff from him that you can study. Thank you for your hard work. Oh, thank you. No, thanks to you. Like, it makes me happier when you guys are here watching. And I really have a lot of fun doing this. Someone's saying, I like to see people work because it makes me want to work. Yeah, same. Honestly, after some burnout of working, like the last few months, I also need some motivation. So I think it would be good for me if you guys are watching me, so I cannot lace around. So yeah, maybe it would be good if I just practice on stream, like doing whatever, like just drawing, like practicing hands or stuff like that. I think it would be good. Okay, we're nearing 2 hours and a half. Do you guys have any question? Did I forget anything extremely important? As I said, like, it's impossible to give you like all the basics of animation in 2 hours. but hopefully I cleared some confusion or some possible confusion uh, from some of these concepts. Ba-ba-bum. Someone says, "Does anyone know any good animation discords?" Uh, Join the Sakura Foundry one if you're not there. There's very often there's people on the voice chat just working uh, and keeping each other accountable as you want. I remember that Kyoto video made a documentary about Kannada animation style and how it originated. I think I watched that at some point. I'm not sure, but yeah, sometimes I just get into Sakugaburo and look for stuff from him. I remember I learned to um, animate electricity from him because the first job I had to do electricity was for Boruto, and it was kind of a weird electricity that would like crawl through walls and stuff. It was kind of an alive electricity, and I found Canada and I kind of copied his stuff. So yeah, it was very useful. Okay, no questions. Um, Everything is kind of clear. You'll probably have to watch this a couple more times because it was a lot of information. Um, I'll tell you right now, if you're in Sakura Foundry, I owe you like 2 months of animation critiques because you guys have been uploading like the Animatsuki challenge and all of that stuff, and everyone has been very busy. But I will try to go through all of that during the week. So during the following weekdays, I'll I'll try to do all of those critiques that we have on the backlog. Okay, I just have to talk to the mods so they select the cuts and we can stream them. Okay, and at some point next week or the next week, we're going to have the layout stream, which is going to be like the real world working um, stream when we will begin to talk about like real time sheets and real layout and cameras and notations and all of that frightening stuff. Okay, but it's going to be very fun because we will see more like actual materials. Like I have access to a lot of cool materials and corrections and very cool drawings that I'm going to show you. So that's going to be a very very fun stream. Okay. Um, Let me read the last comments and we can finish. How do animators draw shading before they start coloring, or why they do use those colors? That's going to come on the layout stream and the second key streams or Negan stream, which is going to go after that. I'm going to explain you all of that, like the shading colors and how to do all of that stuff. Okay, it's coming. Crazy how one dude changed the course of animation. Yeah, I don't know who you were talking about specifically, but yeah, I mean Richard Williams, Milton Call, um, basically all of the old masters have um, changed the industry a bit. Why is music bad? I explained that on the drawing stream, like here in the same channel. You can go a bit back, and there's a like basic drawing for animation, and there I explain why you shouldn't probably listen music while you stream, which is basically because music keeps your important parts of your brain distracted, which keeps you from really focusing on drawing. Um, if you begin to draw without music, like forcing yourself, because some people have to really force themselves to draw without music, you will notice you will improve a lot very fast. So go take a look at that stream where I explain it a bit better. Someone's saying another place for animated electricity is all live action movies. before computers, they had animated effects like that on top of live action footage. Yes, like for example, Ultraman, like the original Ultramans uh, from Japan, they had like special effects, like literally drawn directly on the tape, on the film, which is really cool. Yeah, you're right. That's a very good reference. Uh, yes, please. That's what I want. Nice. Are key animators allowed to do their own in betweens? Sometimes, but generally not. It causes some trouble. I'm going to tell you probably on the layout stream why key animators should not do all of their in betweens. Okay, it actually causes some production problems, and I'm going to explain you why. Okay, thank you so much for the streams. No, thank you guys for coming. Thank you for the advice. I always want to listen to something while working. Yes, me too. But I have to resist because the effect is real. So you have to try. Okay, guys, I think we're done. Thank you a lot for coming. Even though it took a lot of time and the audio is kind of wonky and we had a lot to talk about, it was pretty fun. So hopefully you guys understood. And if not, you can always ask me next time. Oh, before that, speaking about asking me stuff, uh, I haven't forgotten about the marshmallow. I have this page where you can ask me questions um, whenever you want. You can, I'll put it on the description, and it's also on my Twitter. You can basically just send me any question you want, and I'm supposed to answer them on stream. The thing is, I was going to open it now, like before the stream, so I can read the questions, and I got locked out because I don't know. I think the computer um, didn't save my password the right way, so I had to recover the account. But yeah, I haven't forgotten about the marshmallows, so you can go back and ask me stuff there, and I'll totally recover the account, uh, like today or before the next stream. So yeah, that's still active. Okay, thank you guys for coming. I'll see you next week for the animation critiques and maybe the layout stream. Okay, thank you for coming. See you later.